So, our topic this morning is creating meaningful conversation. And I recognize the sacred reading was long when I picked it. And I picked it for a reason, because it really lays the foundation for how most of us enter conversations without realizing that's the meaning that we're entering them with. My experience in almost 60 years on the planet is that we have a lot of meaningful relationships and conversations of which we have no earthly idea what the meaning is. Now, maybe that's just me. How many times have this is a really meaningful relationship, but if someone would say to you, what does it mean to you? See, if we can't immediately articulate the meaning of it, it may well be a meaningful relationship, but wouldn't it be nice to know what the meaning of it is? Wouldn't it be nice to know what the meaning of our conversations really is? We are Centers for Spiritual Living. That's the organization. That's this community. And that is each of us as an individual. Each of us is an individualized center for spiritual living. Not spiritual collection, not spiritual gathering, not spiritual study. Those are things we do. But the point of it is to be centers for spiritual living, which means putting all of that stuff that we learn about, all of the things that we examine, all of the principles that we gain awareness and hopefully understanding about, into practice in our daily lives. So that requires that we begin to reframe and redefine our belief systems and the words that we use. I've asked several people over the last couple of days, what does meaningful conversation mean to you? And everyone had a really clearly defined agenda. So what that reinforces is really the meaning of our conversation is the one we take into it. And how many of us are actually aware that that negates the whole definition of conversation? See, conversation by definition is an exchange. It is a participatory happening. If I am entering into the conversation with a personal agenda, I'm not having a conversation. I'm engaging in a strategic exercise of words for a specific outcome. That's not a conversation. It's a manipulation, oftentimes. And it's oftentimes the source of our greatest frustrations. Because what will evolve in that situation is you will either be immensely successful getting the outcome that you desired going in and immediately negate it because you know you manipulated it, so it can't possibly be real. They don't really mean that. They're only saying it because I made them say it. And you may not even be aware that that's operating, but it is because it has to. Or you will fail miserably because the other person is better at it than you are. But nothing has been gained, and beliefs that limit us have simply been validated because that's what we took into the conversation. What would it be like to enter a conversation the way Toby enters his conversations right now? With innocence, with curiosity, with no predetermined anything, to authentically engage one another, throwing out any ideas of who the other person might be to find out who they are. See, that's what this reading is about. It's about recognizing that we're all communicating from a mask. My conversations, our conversations, your conversations, tend to be the activity of substantiating our masks, of convincing other people of who we believe ourselves to be. What would it be like to enter the conversation without any preconceived notion of who you even are? What might you find out in that conversation? Ernest Holmes, on page 270, which is quite likely my most favorite page in the whole book, one of the things that he says is, we may be quite emphatic in saying that we think the universe exists for the expression of spirit, and people exist for self-expression because they are the expression of spirit. See, if the whole reason for creation is to express, if we are a manifestation and expression of that in form, then it follows that our whole function is to express the divine manifested as us as part of its expression. Because as we sang Melissa Felipe's song, there is only one of us. And what if in your eyes it's me I see? But I'm not seeing Reverend Rafe. I'm seeing the divine. What if we entered every conversation with a curiosity to experience a wholly, completely new experience of divinity in that conversation? It's a perplexing thought, isn't it? Because it requires us to suspend everything that we have given meaning to. It requires that we open to hearing words differently, because words are nothing more than little lettered labels of meaning. And everybody defines them differently. Okay? If we were to write down the phrase, "a rolling stone gathers no moss," and have everybody write down what that means to them, you get all kinds of definitions. They're the exact same words, but we hear them differently because we've gone through life differently. Let me pull up a little something here, because this is like the most perfect example that I know of. And I know I have it here. I just have to find it. Maybe not. Jack Kornfield wrote a poem some of you may or may not be familiar with. Without belaboring it, essentially, and this will not be a direct quote, essentially what the poem is about is, if you can show up after your life is crazy, if you can show up despite the weather, despite what's happening, if you can celebrate what's happening in other people's lives, if no matter what is put on your plate, you can eat it with absolute gratitude and enjoy it and come back for more, if nothing in your day bothers you and you can lay down after that day and sleep with no medication and no need for anything, you're probably a dog. So if we can enter into these conversations like they're brand new, like we have no meaning happening, we're probably a dog. Because really, I don't know of any way to suspend everything I believe in order to have a brand new experience in every breath. And I think it behooves us to admit that instead of pretending that, no, this is a brand new experience. Really? What happened to all your filters? How did you even understand the word experience without some prior experience defining the word experience? It just can't happen. Okay? So we have to wrap ourselves around that. I think the biggest thing to recognize is that conversations are either trusting that we are experiencing the divine, or it's an activity of being seen. That we're not really interested in a conversation. I'm more interested in being seen than seeing you. It doesn't make us bad. It doesn't make us wrong. It makes us amazingly human. Part of what this reading, the mask, is talking about is how scary it is, how we have this incredible desire to be seen, and yet it terrifies us to the core of who we are. Because it just might be that we've never met ourselves. It just might be that I'm invested in my mask because that's really who I believe myself to be. And if I allow you to reflect something different to me, well, now what do? Now this person, this image, this idea of myself doesn't necessarily work. Uh-oh. Because, see, when it doesn't work, all of the ways I am in the world don't work. Because all of those ways are based on this identity. So if we can allow conversation to reveal something magnificent in us that we've never met, what a gift. What would it be like if you just entered curiously? Because here's the thing. The more you learn about someone else, the more you learn about you. How many of us are here? One. See, the more I open to your expression of divinity, the more I know my divinity. Because we are the same divinity. It would be like eating one food every meal, every day, for the entire lifetime. That's all you get to know. Think of the things you would never get to experience. Meaningful conversation opens us up to a bigger experience of who we are. We, the Divine One. Faith is a huge part of that. And let's be really clear what faith is. On page 283 of The Science of Mind, all caps, just so we didn't miss it, Ernest says, faith is a mental attitude which is so convinced of its own idea, which so completely accepts it, that any contradiction is unthinkable and impossible. Is our faith in our identity or in the truth of our being? See, because if my faith is in my identity, the same thing applies. Anything that contradicts it is unthinkable and impossible. So when you reflect an image of me that doesn't match my image of me, you must be wrong, because that's a contradiction and it is unthinkable and impossible, even if it's more magnificent than I ever thought I could be. How dare you think I'm that? How dare you think I'm so wonderful? You just don't know. And then we proceed to educate people about how magnificent we're not. It's just a mask. It will never be true. But until we are willing to let it go, it will always be true for us. And we will make it real in other people's experience of us. We are at choice. I invite you to consider in the privacy of your own thoughts that you are absolutely, without question, more magnificent than you can even imagine in human form. And because you can't imagine it, but other people can see it, it just might be an amazing process to engage in meaningful conversation where other people give you an experience of you that you can't get anywhere else. Just might grow you. It just might increase your happiness. It just might take you to a place where you wake up every morning smiling with no idea why. Now, I gotta ask, do you care? Does it really matter why you wake up filled with joy and magnificence and wonder at the world? Because for some of us it does, if we're telling the truth. That would be a really confusing day, and we would spend most of the day going, have I lost my mind? Why am I so happy? And I hear my buddy, Reverend Jeff Anderson, every time I use that phrase, losing my mind. He'd be like, you say that like it's a bad thing. Because I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I could use a little brainwashing. It's got some stuff in there that does not need to be there. If I could hook up the hose and flush, I'd be good. I don't recommend that you try that. But perhaps, meaningful conversation could be a gentle mental floss that cleans out some nooks and crannies. That if we allow it, meaningful conversation can be a beautiful mirror where we get to sit there and go, wow, I had no idea I was this amazing as you. That means you have to suspend your opinion of who they are too. And that is oftentimes way more challenging. Because we look at one another and we instantly think we know who somebody is. No, you don't. If they don't know who they are, what makes you think you know? Okay. Because what we know is the mask that we've been shown. My invitation to each of us is over this next week to engage in a conversation with a complete stranger from a place of abject curiosity, without any preconceived notions of who they might be or how they might respond to you. It's a simple exchange, speaking and listening. I'm not suggesting that you take a total stranger home, fix them dinner, have them over for the evening, and let them spend the night. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting have a conversation from a place of complete curiosity and know that you are the divine experiencing a divine expression. That's all that's happening. Let's take this into prayer. Knowing there is only one infinite, ever-present allness, that it is complete, perfect, and whole within itself, creating out of itself, by itself, to be itself. I know it must be my life. It must be the life of all. And so in that, I can lay claim to and affirm that every activity of this human expression is, in fact, an activity of divinity. And so I claim and affirm an opening to a greater experience of the divinity that humanity is, beyond behavior, beyond assumptions, beyond experience, beyond prediction. To stand in the innocence of, aren't you an amazing way for divinity to express? Grateful to know this is how it works. Grateful to know that as it is spoken, the law, that activity part of divinity, instantly goes to work making it happen, to bring it into being. And so it is already done, and I give thanks for knowing that it's already done. Knowing that it is complete, I can let go and move on to the next thing to attend. So before we get to our sacred giving,